We have 2 days of training camp in the books. Young players are stepping up, veterans are looking like themselves, maybe even better versions of themselves. And Brock Purdy is doing Brock Purdy things. All the observations, everything that happened in day two of training camp next on 49ers Cutback.
From the alley-oops at Kezar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. Glad you could all join me so we can talk about day two of 49ers training camp. It's always interesting when the players get back on the field and we start getting reacclimated to football, what it's going to look like, because you don't know which players are going to show up and start showing out, which players are going to come on the scene that you didn't expect, who's going to live up to expectation. There's just so many questions. And all the while, what's going on at training camp is basic install of offense and defense. When you're in the first block of practice, that's exactly what you're doing. You're getting used to the time, you're getting used to the rhythm, you're getting used to the calls of the line of scrimmage from the quarterback, the cadence. You're just getting used to everything. You're getting back to football. And for some of these guys, it's the first time that they've done it in a complete group setting, because even though you have mini camp, not everyone gets out there. So it's unique. And what you start seeing is players that have done a very good job over the offseason be prepared for this moment. And they come out and they show up and they show out and they start getting people's attention. It's always fun to hear the positive reports about players at practice. And we know there's going to be plenty of negative reports that are going to come out as well. But let's focus on some of the things that are happening, some of the key contributors that are starting to make some plays, and just what is going on at training camp. It's a lot of fun. This is the great time of the year where every team is filled with optimism, and the 49ers are filled with optimism, because even though day one was marred a little bit by some injury concerns, day two came off a lot better. And so, with that being said, it seems like players are acclimated now to being involved in training camp. And the 49ers are going to ramp this thing up for one more day. On Friday, they'll have a intense practice. And then Saturday, they'll wind it down a little bit. They'll have a nice, easy practice. That one's not open to the fans. And they'll take a nice, easy day. And then Sunday, it'll be a day off. And then when we get back Monday, they're going to be lighting it up and getting into pads. And a different block of practice is going to start. So everything's going to keep building and building and building until they get to the regular season, and we're a part of that build. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about a lot of young players that are stepping up and making plays in the early parts of camp, veterans who have come in looking better than ever, and then, of course, just some inside notes and things that are going on at training camp. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe, please give it a 5-star rating. And of course, that's available on all audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. Right now, you can receive a 50% bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics to baseball to Formula One racing. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet Online, the game starts here. And so, training camp, one of the first things you always do is take a look at who is at training camp and who is not at training camp. And players that weren't there, they were either on PUP or suffered injuries in day one and weren't going to be practicing. So, of course, you're not going to see Talanoa Hufanga out there even though he was there. He's wearing a little bit of a knee brace, talking to John Lynch on the side. But those guys aren't going to be involved in practice. No Drake Jackson, no Drake Greenlaw. I know day one he was out there kind of helping with linebacker drills, but you expect not to see any of them. Of course, Brandon Ayuk is still holding in. Trent Williams is holding out. And a little bit of news on that. He got put on the reserve holdout list, and the 49ers signed Malik Turner, wide receiver. Down 2 wide receivers right now with Ayuk's hold in, and Ricky Pearsall, who was working on a side field, working to get himself back. The 49ers bring in Malik Turner, who's been with the organization before, to get some of those reps. It's important to have players that can handle the reps. 3 quarterbacks, lots of wide receivers running routes in your 7-on-7s and in your normal warm-up drills. You got to make sure you have a guy, so they took care of that today as well. Linebacker Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, who got hurt yesterday, sat out practice today. Isaac Garendo, the same thing. He's dealing with a hamstring. A new player added to that list that we didn't know about, Tay Martin. We don't exactly know what is wrong with Tay Martin, but he wasn't practicing either. So Malik Turner, very important, because actually 3 wide receivers are on the list of players that are missing. I think the good news was that everyone got to see videos all over social media. Ricky Pearsall running on the side field, getting some extra work, running pretty good. And so he looks like he's working his way back. Kyle Shanahan said yesterday that potentially Pearsall was going to be ready for block 2. So the first block of practice is Wednesday through Saturday. The second block will start Monday, and that will run through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, a 3-day block. And they expect Ricky Pearsall could be back for then, and it looks like it's trending in the right direction. So that's always good news. Now, one of the players that's looking really good right now is Nick Bosa. And Nick Bosa hasn't really had a full training camp in a while. Of course, last year he had the big holdout. He didn't come in until days before the first game. So he's out there, and there was a lot of conversation about how Nick Bosa makes the offensive line better. And Nick Bosa's out there wreaking havoc right now. And, Trent Williams is not out there, so that's nothing that's not uncommon for what happens at training camp. Trent Williams will play from time to time, but most of the work goes to Jalen Moore. This is good news for the 49ers. Number one, you've got Nick Bosa out there looking really good and looking comfortable, being explosive, being powerful. And that's always what you want from one of your premier players, because you need him to have a good season. He had one season where he got 18.5 sacks, and then last year, it definitely wasn't the same. Was used differently? A little bit. Of course, if you go back and you watch the change in defensive philosophy video, I talk about the fact that the way that DeMeco Ryans ran defense benefited Nick Bosa, and there's probably going to be a return to that in some categories. But Bosa looking at tip-top shape and working on his craft in training camp is important, because Nick Bosa winning right now is a good news for him, but it's also good news for Jalen Moore, Colton McKivitz, George Kittle, those guys that he's beating on these drills, because the thing is right now sacks don't matter. What that does allow Jalen Moore to see what he's doing wrong. It allows Chris Forrester to see how he handled Nick Bosa. So if Bosa beats him with speed around the edge, which happened, then you say, hey, look, Jalen Moore, this is what you have to do. You see your slide right here. You should have cut him off here. Oh, he beat you on the inside later on. Okay, well, that's where you can't let your weight get too far outside. It's good coaching reasons. Nick Bosa can go to Jalen Moore and say, hey, I saw you did this. I was able to get wrist control on you, work underneath with the rip. There's a lot of cool stuff that can happen. So that's why I don't always pay attention to results as much, as these are learning experiences. A week from now, if we're in full pads, that's another element to this, right? No pads. Do sacks really count if people aren't wearing pads? What happens when Jalen Moore has pads and we're in that physicality part? How does he body up? When they have pads on, there's a lot more that you can get a hold of. And yes, you do grab jersey as long as it's within the framework. So there's a big difference between now and a week from now. But the footwork wise, how is Jalen Moore now responding to the speed of Nick Bosa? How is he responding to the power move through the inside? If Moore is handling it correctly, then it all worked out. And of course, Bosa's going to beat Jalen Moore some of the time. It's just the way it is. What you're hoping is that Jalen Moore gets a little bit consistent and he's able to battle and be a little bit better with Nick Bosa. But Colton McKivitz and Jalen Moore are going to benefit supremely from Nick Bosa being at training camp all season this year. he wasn't there last year, and it definitely probably put them behind the eight ball. Now they've got a premier pass rusher, and not just one, but two. Leonard Floyd, Etor Gross Matos are out there rushing as well. So that's going to help these young guys. So it's great news that Bosa is looking absolutely fantastic, but it's also good news the 49ers' young offensive linemen get work. Jalen Moore's going to get a lot of snaps during training camp, and that's good. That way, when Trent Williams comes back, inevitably, it's going to happen. We will have a capable left tackle. And the one thing I can say about Jalen Moore, and every single year I've went to training camp, he's gotten better and better. Last year, he dealt with a little bit of an injury. That was unfortunate, but we're getting him to get better and better. We're going to talk about the offensive line and some of the rotation coming up in just a moment. But I wanted to go from talking about what was happening with Bosa to talking a little bit about Gross Matos and how Gross Matos has really asserted himself early on in training camp. We're seeing the player the 49ers envisioned coming in, an Arden Key type role, but also a guy that's winning playing on the edge. He doesn't have to go in to play over a guard in pass rush situations to get to the quarterback. He can do it from the outside. I think that there's going to be a lot of things still when we get the pads. Let's see what happens. But hand placement, first step, technique, all of that right now for Gross Matos is on display. And that's good for news for the 49ers. That's exactly what they want. So you're getting him getting in. He's getting sacks. He's getting pressure on Brock Purdy. And all those things continue to play it. It is contagious. If Bosa, Floyd, Gross Matos do it, that's going to help a guy like Robert Beal, guys who are at the end of this roster. And one of the things we're trying to find out is how good is Robert Beal? Well, Robert Beal had a little bit of a sack taken away from him where he had a great speed rush around the outside. There was a penalty on the play. False starts are very, very normal at this time of year, and a false start played into that category. But you want to see the first step explosiveness. You want to see the bend around the corner. You want to see the handwork. You want to see how he dips his hips, his rush lines. There's a lot of things that you're looking at, not just the results. And so those are good things that we're seeing so far from Gross Matos, what we're seeing from Robert Beal Jr., which is important because we need to have that go-to depth behind Nick Bosa and behind Leonard Floyd, because after Beal and after Gross Matos, it kind of falls off. Drake Jackson still dealing with a knee injury. He's still on PUP and not back. You've got some other guys that are right there, a guy like Austin Bryant, who the 49ers used a little bit last year. But do they expect him to be able to step in? I think he's a practice squad potential guy. So the 49ers got question marks. If they get answered by Gross Matos, which I think they will, because I think Gross Matos is a huge addition to this team, and Bill, who was very explosive coming out of college, out of Georgia, GTFO, remember, was the metric they used. Last year, he didn't play a lot of snaps, but they're expecting a bigger role because he was unhealthy last year in training camp. So that's good news for the 49ers. Now, one of the most interesting things over the first 2 days of training camp has been the usage of Spencer Burford. And you know, if you've listened to the channel for a while, I have not been ready to move on from Spencer Burford, that I believe that he's a young guy with a lot of upside that they need to continue to work with. Of course, Dominic Pooney was going to provide competition. The return of John Feliciano definitely put Feliciano in the catbird seat. Well, over the first 2 days of practice, a development has been Spencer Burford is taking all the first team reps at right guard. And I think that would be a little bit surprising. Now, we know that Jake Brendel was dealing with knee tendonitis, but Brendel's back, and Brendel's been working with the first team, except for when he's not. It looks like John Feliciano is going to be in a little bit of a camp competition with Jake Brendel, or at least they're taking a look at it. This is one of those things that we've been talking about on the channel for a little while, is what combination is the best offensive line for the 49ers to put out there week in and week out. We know Feliciano is a good player, but would a combination of Feliciano and Burford be better than a combination of Brendel and Feliciano? And I think that's what they're going to go ahead and look at. That's what they're contemplating right now. We've heard from Chris Forster talk about Feliciano's best position being center before, and Jake Brendel might have just opened the door for that. They're high on Spencer Burford and his ability as athleticism and a young player that can get better. If he got more consistent and he can prove that in training camp, there's a real chance that Feliciano and Brindle are in a wholesale competition. And if that happens, who knows if Feliciano wins? There are some advantages to each player. Feliciano definitely is able to anchor better when it comes to pass protection. He's more physical at the point of attack with short yardage run plays. Those things are huge advantages for him. He definitely holds on to blocks a lot longer than Brendel. Where Brendel has an advantage and where Feliciano has to see if he can get there is Brendel's ability to get to second level using his athleticism. Brendel's ability to understand protections in this offense and know how to use them. If Feliciano picked it all up last year and now understands protections and can make the calls and is on the same level as Brendel, this competition is going to come down to play on the field, and Feliciano just might win. There is a realistic possibility, and this is the first time I'm like actually verbally saying it, that John Feliciano could beat out Jake Brendel. I thought that injury opened the door. I thought maybe they would ease Brendel in, and the problem with that is when somebody's playing, if they're playing really good, then it starts making their wheels turn. What if he's better? And if he plays better and he executes better, opportunity comes. So there's a potential change along the starting offensive line. I would say right now, it's not a foregone conclusion by any means that Brendel's going to get beat out by Feliciano, but there is a door open. And right now, Spencer Burford is getting those right guard snaps. If we get into pads, we get into preseason, and Spencer Burford plays really well. He's playing more consistent than last year. And John Feliciano's playing really well at center. There's a chance we could have a change at center. If that doesn't happen and Brendel beats out Feliciano, boy, is that going to be a fun competition at right guard between Burford and Feliciano. It could be interesting, but something to monitor and watch is the offensive line right now. And we know that when you're looking at other positions, left tackle, we know it's going to end up being Trent. Aaron Banks, no competition at left guard. Competition is at center and right guard, and we'll see what happens there. Of course, Jacob Kingston was taking some right tackle reps at practice today as well, so he's got that. We'll see. We thought he was going to move inside, but with the amount of talent that's inside right now, when you just think about this 49ers team with Brendel, Feliciano, Burford, and Pooney, not to mention Ben Bartz, Nick Zakel, all competing for jobs, it's going to be one heck of a battle on the inside, and I'm curious to see who stands out. We know that Pooney's going to make a push, and I'm really curious to see how he does, but Burford getting an opportunity, Feliciano getting an opportunity to potentially start. At safety, this has been what we've been wondering. The expectation has been, of course, with Hufanga staying on PUP, that it's going to be Jair Brown, that it's going to be George Odom, and that is the case on the starting unit right now. George Odom has stepped in alongside Jair Brown, and it makes sense. He's been on this team for a while. He understands this defense. He understands what they want. And Nick Sorensen said during OTAs that George Odom has showed massive improvements. Anytime you get a player that's showing massive improvement, you're optimistic. Now, George Odom's best safety play definitely came when he was in Indianapolis, where there was one season, in fact, before he became a free agent and came to the 49ers, where he didn't miss any tackles inside the box. He was just known to make all those plays. Now, we haven't seen that level of consistency with him in his tackling when he's been playing for the 49ers. But if he's now feeling comfortable, maybe we can see a return to form where he definitely tackles at a higher level. And we know when it comes to running the alley and making tackles on the edge, that's a key ingredient to this 49ers defense. If he can at least handle that portion of the defense while Jair Brown handles the deep third and a lot of the coverage there, that would at least allow the 49ers to potentially bridge the gap until Talanoa Hufanga is ready. Now, we're still optimistic. Hufanga's out there wearing a knee brace, chatting up with the guys, with John Lynch. Potentially, he comes back at some point, week 2, week 3 of training camp. We'll see. And when that happens, then maybe George Odom goes back, and we just got a solid safety room with Hufanga, Jair Brown, Malik Mustafa, who had the big interception yesterday. Now, reports are that interception was fantastic, but underthrown by Josh Dobbs, which changes the dynamic of the play a little bit. But I love the fact that he got there. So it'll be something to watch. Safety room's going to be very intense right now. Odom will handle it. But let's see, can Malik Mustafa push for extra reps at the position? And what happens if Hufanga is looking like he won't come back in time? That happens. Are they going to feel comfortable with Odom and Mustafa at the position? Do they feel comfortable with Taylor Hawkins or Eric Harris or one of those guys potentially stepping in as the fourth safety until Hufanga comes back 3 weeks in if they keep him on PUP? I think safety's a position to watch all throughout training camp. Now at linebacker, with Flanagan Fowles getting hurt, it opened the door. And yesterday, I believe that meant that maybe we were going to get to see D. Winters step in with that first team unit with Fred Warner, Devondre Campbell, and potentially get those reps. But it wasn't. It was Curtis Robinson. So 49ers staying with the veteran route. Robinson been with the team for a little while, formerly played at Stanford, but he's been on the 49ers practice squad the last several years. The last year, he decided not to go to another team and add to their 53-man roster, instead staying for the 49ers playoff and potential Super Bowl win. So he's a loyal guy. He's a pretty good player. He's a thumper, a good special teamer, and he's getting those reps right now. Everything has to be earned for these young players for the 49ers. D. Winters is going to have to go out there and earn it with consistent linebacker play. I will say this. Every year I go to training camp, there's a veteran that steps into one of these roles, and eventually somebody comes in and pushes them for that spot. It's not the first time that I've seen a guy like Demetrius Flanagan Fowles or Curtis Robinson be ahead of a young guy, and then that young guy step up and step into a role. So we're going to see more reps from D. Winters as this continues to roll, and we'll see what happens when they get out there and actually start making plays on the field. But right now, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of Devondre Campbell and a lot of Curtis Robinson, because they're also giving breaks here and there to Fred Warner. And with Campbell's ability, and this is one thing that's huge for the 49ers, Campbell's ability to play Mike linebacker makes it so he can stay on the field. He gives them that Azeez Al-Shire type of ability where they have versatility with one of their guys. Greg Greenlaw, he doesn't play Mike. So they haven't really had that guy. That's why Flanagan Fowles was always important for this team. They've been training Jalen Graham to play Mike. In fact, a fun picture that John Chapman took was Jalen Graham at Mike with D. Winters at Will and Tatum Bethune at Sam with Malik Mustafa right behind him inside the box. The young cats, the next generation of 49ers defensive players all together. Cool shot to go ahead and grab. And those guys have been doing really good and trying to make up ground on these veteran players that they're trying to catch and potentially make this roster. Now, interesting because day one, there's only media available, and only media was on the field as far as with press passes and all of that. And the conflicting reports have been that Debo, some people said he looked great, some people said he looked bad. Well, Debo's looking really good. Debo is looking very slim. He's looking athletic. He's looking aggressive. His hands are in midseason form. He's got strong hands. He's looking really well. I think the 49ers are excited about what Debo's going to do this year. I think he'll ramp it up a little bit as training camp goes, but he'll never fully release and let go his full potential until we get to the regular season, because there's no reason to just go that hard during training camp if you're Debo Samuel. But he looks in good shape, and he's looking like a player that can make some plays, for this 49ers football team, and they're going to need him. Right now, Ayuk is not out there, and last year Ayuk was the king of camp. I mean, the guy absolutely tore it up. So now it's Debo's job to kind of carry it for the young players right now. Another young player that had a good day was Darrell Luter Jr. We talked about Malik Mustafa having an interception yesterday. Well, today, Darrell Luter Jr. had an interception where he went up and had a jump ball win over Jawan Jennings. That was really important, and that's what we're trying to see what we can get from Darrell Luter Jr. in year two. Luter Jr.'s got the length, he's got the size, and we know they were very high on him. And in fact, I did my training camp 53-man roster prediction over on Patreon, so go check that out if you want to see what I have to say about who I believe is going to make this team before training camp really ramps up. And Darrell Luter Jr. was a guy I had on the fringe. I'm not going to say I had him making it or not making it, but these type of plays are the reason that Darrell Luter Jr. has a real shot to not just make this team, but contribute to this team in year two. We know he's going to help on special teams. I know he made a mistake in the Super Bowl. That's whatever. But he's also made some great plays, including running down D. Eskridge last year against Seattle when Eskridge had the sideline. It should have had a kickoff return for touchdown, but Darrell Luter Jr. ran him down. So he has done a very good job this year. He's staying healthy, and that will give him the opportunity to go out there and play. Now, the other thing that we have questions about is who's playing where when it comes to cornerback. Well, early on, the way it looks right now, of course, just like always, your two starting outside corners have been Charvarius Ward, who's looked fantastic, and Deommodore Lenoir. And then when they go to their nickel package, just like we kind of expected, Isaac Yedem is coming in. He's playing outside. Deommodore Lenoir is moving inside. Renardo Green's playing nickel with the second unit, so he's getting a lot of work there. Had a tough play against Deebo Samuel in day one, where Deebo was able to beat him for a slant and make a nice catch. To be expected, the slot naturally creates separation, and so that allows Deebo to get a free release against Renardo Green, and he's a veteran. He's going to get some space there and some separation. So Renardo Green is going to continue to work and get better. So right now we know who that group is, but the 49ers also using Deommodore Lenoir in the nickel where he's more comfortable. He's able to blitz and make some plays, and he had a nice blitz on Brock Purdy today. So Deommodore Lenoir looking like he's one of those guys that can get it done, and so that's really huge. Now, Brock Purdy, looking like Brock Purdy had a absolutely fantastic throw up the seam to Braden Willis. So Braden Willis, the young tight end, making a play. Yesterday, it was Saubert making the big play over the top of an outstretched hand. Today, it's Braden Willis making the play down the seam. And so that's always good. And then guess who else showed up again for a second straight day impressed? Starting X receiver. And I know it's right now Ayuk's not in the house and Pearsall's not in the house, but starting X receiver, Danny Gray, making a play on a crosser. It was just yesterday on the Red and Bull show where I said, Danny Gray, he was really good at running these big routes across the middle and plays that, are very accustomed to this 49ers offense. And then he has the yak ability. Well, day one, he showed some of that yak ability. Day two, he catches one of those crossers over the middle for a big gain. Brock Purdy hits him in stride. Those are the plays that get you excited because Danny Gray has the speed to separate. And when you have the speed to separate, you just make it easier on your quarterback. And if the quarterback's hitting him in stride like that, that means they got chemistry. That is always really, really good. Now, we also had a great catch from Eric Saubert again, a ball that bounced off Chris Conley and was able to be wrangled by Eric Saubert. So Saubert is starting off strong. And we knew that Saubert was a good blocker, but what was he going to do in the passing game yesterday? It was a play intended for him that he made today. It was a play not intended for him, but he was in the right place at the right time and did the right thing. So good news for the 49ers when it comes to Saubert. But Brock Purdy out there looking comfortable, looking confident, in full command of the 49ers offense and being able to make all the throws. Ball looks like it has a little bit more zip as well. So big ups to Brock Purdy and what he's able to do. Now, Jacob Cowing continues to look good when it comes to catching the football and having explosive plays with yak. Are we shocked? Danny Gray, Jacob Cowing, speedsters, right now no contact. These guys should elevate and look really good. Cowing and Gray both benefiting from guys being out, getting extra reps, and Cowing is impressing. So that's really, really good news. Now, some of the problems are with the punt. And he wasn't the only one. Ronnie Bell also muffing punts out there. He muffed 2 punts. Trent Taylor is the most secure with the ball as far as punt return, which could help him make this football team, which is crazy. So I don't know what the 49ers are going to do when it comes to punt return. Ronnie Bell definitely hasn't worked out to be that guy. They're hoping that Jacob Cowing could develop into that punt returner. That's an avenue for him to potentially be active on game day if he can handle that. We'll see what happens when Ricky Pearsall gets back out there. Pearsall has been a secure catcher of the football on punts. So some developments need to happen there. Cowing's a young guy in his first time catching punts, so I'm going to give him a little bit of time, give him a little bit of grace. When it comes to Bell, he struggled last year, and he's struggling again. I don't know if it's something that Ronnie Bell is going to be able to handle this year. So It's interesting to see where he's at. Christian McCaffrey was back getting first team reps with the starting offense. That's always what you like to see from the offensive player of the year. And this is just going to be something frequent. The 49ers are going to be very diligent with his practice reps with Fred Warner, with Nick Bosa, with George Kittle, with Trent Williams. All the guys, they're going to be very diligent and manage their workload. And they're going to do that with Christian McCaffrey. They know exact plans that have worked to keep these guys healthy, and they're going to stay on those. So if you hear guys aren't practicing, they call them maintenance days. That's okay. They're just taking care of the body, and that's what's important. The main thing is that when we get into the regular season, they are ready to go. And then we've been talking about the running back position over the offseason, and Jordan Mason has been a topic of conversation. Would he get traded? Would he be on this team? Well, Jordan Mason's making some good runs. He's making some good catches. He's better in pass protection. So Jordan Mason looks like a more complete running back early on in training camp. Long ways to go, but that's good news. He continues to evolve. He continues to elevate his game. And with the injury to Isaac Guerrero, he might not have as much pressure from the players behind him. So he might be able to, that 1-2-3 punch with McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, and Jordan Mason could be fantastic all year long. So it's good to see young players getting better, whether that's Danny Gray or Jordan Mason or a guy like D. Winters coming in, Terrell Luter Jr. making plays, young guys stepping up. That's what you have to do if you want to remain on top, if you're the 49ers. But you also have to have your best players looking their best in camp. Guys like Bosa, guys like Brock Purdy looking absolutely fantastic. That's what you like to hear. So a good report from day 2 of training camp. Of course, day 3 just around the corner. And that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to watch practice and see how it goes. And of course, I'll be back to give a report on what happens at training camp. So thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Really appreciate it. If you're listening to audio platform 49ers Cutback on Believe. Please give it a 5-star rating. Of course, this episode brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. And remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.